Hi everyone, Laura here from Kindred Arts with my daughter Calla, my partner in art. We are continuing our nature and art study with our unit on birds today. So our first video was how to draw a North American robin. We used Montessori 3-part cards. Today we're going to be talking about different types of bird's nest, and we're going to be constructing our own bird's nest. We're going to be using natural materials. We're also going to be using our own homemade salt dough. So now is a great time to pause your video, check out our materials list below in the description, and I'll also put up a picture on the screen of all of the materials that we have today. All right, now that we're back and we have everything that we need, I'm going to talk a little bit about different types of bird's nests. So I'm going to hold up this great informational card.
Just to know, that one is a robin.
And I will share a link below in the description. But on this card, which is from a bird feed distributor in Great Britain called Brinvale, it's going to show you all different types of birds with their nests and the materials that the birds actually use to build their nests. So one example that is common to us and that we've actually used before in some of our tutorials is of the robin. And this is what the robin's nest looks like. And over here it tells us that a robin's nest is made from leaves, moss, hair, and rootlets. Interesting. It's really fascinating to see the different types of nests. And if you'd like, there's lots of information online to learn more about different types of bird's nests, different styles, and the materials that they use. Today, we are going to look at the robin's nest and be inspired by some of the things that the robin uses to create our very own bird's nest. So we're going to share with you our example that we built. We are going to be using our salt dough, which is like a type of Play-Doh, to build a coil bird nest. And I'm going to teach you today how to make coils out of Play-Doh so that you can build your own bird's nest. We also layered in between the coils of dough, of salt dough, different natural materials. So you've already gathered your natural materials, and yours might include some of what we have, like sticks and grass
and
leaves,
feathers.
And we have some feathers today. We also use some yarn, which is from home. So we're here with everything that we need to make our dough. We're going to start with 1 cup of flour, 1/2 cup of salt. Any salt is fine. We just used table salt. We have 1 cup of water, and it's helpful to have it in a measuring cup where you can see where 1/2 cup is, because you start with half a cup of water and then add it as you need it. And then if you'd like, the optional ingredient is ground cinnamon. We like using that to add some brown color, but also for the smell. Cinnamon is also antibacterial, so as you're using the dough in your hands, it just helps to cut back on some of the bacteria. Can't hurt, right? We also always keep a towel handy when we're doing activities that involve water or anything messy. So we are going to start by having Calla dump our flour into our mixing bowl. Okay, go right ahead, the whole thing. Awesome. And then our salt. And then we are going to do a pretty generous pour of our cinnamon.
Can I help?
You may.
All done?
You can do a little more, actually. More. All right, we're going to mix our dry ingredients together with our mixing spoon. We're now ready for our water. I'm going to show you what our dry ingredients look like. You can see we added quite a bit of cinnamon. So now we're going to do our best to pour just about 1/2 cup in. So we don't want the whole thing, we just want half. So pour just a little, and then we'll check the line on our measuring cup and see. We want the water to go all the way down to that line right there. So you can pour quite a bit more.
2?
Where it says 1/2. That's 1/2 a cup. Okay, so put it down and we'll check it. Nice job. So we're halfway there. We're at 3/4, or went down by 1/4 of a cup. Let's stop there and see what our dough is going to look like. We're going to gently mix it together.
See, so we have to stop right here.
So here it is starting to blend together. We're gonna add just a little bit more water, and you just add a little bit at a time. So just a tiny splash. You might even need to get your hands dirty. That's good.
How come?
Might even need to get your hands dirty here and mix some of it together with your hands so that it really blends together.
Can I taste it?
So, that's a great question. She can taste it. You can taste it. Do you want to try it?
Yeah.
Okay. There you are. What does it taste like?
Tastes salty.
It tastes salty. Well, it's salt dough. So we're back. We added some more flour to our dough. And I'm going to show it to you up close so that you can see. Can you hear that sound? It's almost like my hands are sticking to the dough, but it's not sticky. That's the best way to describe the texture that you want. You want it to be wet enough so that it really sticks together, but not so wet that it's sticky or slimy in your hands. You'll feel what consistency is best for you. You can always go in and add a little bit more flour. So I have a little flour on the bottom of my bowl, and you just knead it in by pushing the dough around in your hands or on the tabletop. So now that we have our dough the consistency that we want, we are ready to start creating our coils to build our nest. So I'm going to show you our example again, and you'll see in the bottom that our coils are little pieces of dough that almost look like a snake, and I'll show you how to make one in a minute, that we create a spiral with to build the base of our nest. So Cal and I are each going to take a piece of dough.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to start by rolling it into a ball in our hands.
It does feel like that.
You can kind of hear the stickiness a little bit, or the moisture in it. All right, so a ball doesn't have to be a perfect ball, and then we're going to roll it between our hands like this. So Cal and I both have our caterpillar looking shapes, and now we want to make it into a snake, so a longer coil here.
I knew you would do
And we're going to use both of our hands to roll out our snake. We want to roll gently and press as evenly as possible so that our snake starts to become the same size all the way across, the same thickness. If it starts to break apart, you can actually, or get really thin somewhere, you can actually break it apart and push some of the thin spots together and then start to gently roll the entire snake out again, really gently. If you see a spot becoming thin, you want to move your hands to a different spot on your snake. There you go. All right, so watch underneath that hand. That's getting pretty thin, right? So now you want to move your hand a little further down, and roll really gently. It's better to go gentle and slow because it's always easier to make your snake thinner than it is to make it thicker again. Okay, you ready? So we're going to take our coil and put the one end of it right here in the middle, press it down just a little bit, and we're going to pick up the rest of our coil and start twisting around the centerpiece. It's okay if it breaks. I'm going to put that piece aside, and we'll pick it up again after. And we're gently coiling it in a spiral pattern. And as we put it in a spiral pattern, we're pressing it together by patting it with our fingers where the coils meet. Yeah, just like that, Cal. Cal is doing it in a little bit of a different way. She's rolling it together. If a little piece broke off, that's okay. And now I'm going to add it by taking the end of one coil and putting it on top of where the last coil in my spiral ended. And we're going to pat it all down. I'm going to pick it right up off the table and show you what it looks like. That is what my coil looks like now that I've put it into a spiral. We want this to be, and Cal has got it too, we want this to be just about the size of your palm. So I'm going to add a little bit more to mine.
It's just about the size of mine.
Yours is just about the size of yours, yes. You can add another coil if you'd like. It can be a little bit bigger than your palm, but I wouldn't go too much bigger than that or it will be a little tricky to build your nest.
Now what are we
So
doing?
Cal and I are going to work on building out the base of our nest a little bit bigger. And then we'll come back and start working on the sides. when Kyla and I finished our base, we were just talking about how if we look down and see any areas where we can see in between the coils, we want to tap down so that the coils are touching everywhere on our base. So I'll hold mine up so you can see. There's the base of our nest. It's just a little bit bigger than my palm.
Mama.
Now we're going to start building up the sides. It's okay. That's great. See, it's just about the size of mine. All right, so I am going to put the base of my nest aside for a moment. Kyla and I are going to make a few more coils. You can do the same, and then we'll come back. We're going to make 2 long coils. We could use 2 coils for our base. We're going to make 2 more of those so that we're ready to build up the sides of our nest. Done creating our 2 coils. We are ready to start building up the sides of our nest and using some of our natural materials. So we're going to start by taking our first coil and our base of our nest, and we're going to put our coil on top of the outside layer, the outside ring of the base of our nest. And we're going to gently press down all the way around so that coil sticks. And when we get back to the beginning of the coil, we're just going to lay the rest of the coil on the table. Like that. And now we're going to do 2 things. The first thing we're going to do is get our water. Remember we said to get a little extra water? We're going to leave that in the middle. I'm going to use my index finger and just gently dip it in the water. It doesn't need to be very wet. And I'm going to run my finger around the top of the coil that I just laid down so it looks a little shiny because it's a little bit damp. All the way around just once. Don't need to get more water, just a little bit all the way around. Now we can start adding our natural materials. So I'm going to start with some grass. That's the easiest thing typically to add. So I've got a piece of grass. I'm going to lay it on top of some of that wet coil and make sure that at least some of it is sticking out either towards the outside of the nest or towards the inside, because that's how we're going to be able to see our natural materials. I'm going to do the same thing with a piece of a twig. I broke a piece off. It's only a few inches long. And I'm going to lay that on top of my wet coil so that at least some of it is sticking out. I'm going to do another piece of grass, and then I'm going to take a piece of yarn. Sorry, Cal, I reached right in front of you. All right, I'm going to hold it. Okay, so we've added our first coil on top of the outside of the edge of the base of our nest. We put our finger in our water and spread just a little bit on and layered our first layer of natural materials. Now we're ready to continue putting our coil on top of itself as we twist it all the way around. So now we're also layering it on top of our natural materials, which are going to show a little bit. They're going to stick out. And as we lay our coil down, we're gently patting it. And patting it down is going to help it to stick to the coil underneath. So is the little bit of water that we added. Okay, we're going to do the same thing again. I'm going to dip my finger in. I'm going to gently draw the water all the way around. Doesn't need to be too wet. You can dip your finger in a second time, but we don't want it to be too watery here. Now I'm going to add some natural materials.
Can I have some feathers?
You may. We've got some grasses here.
And I thought the feather could be a nice rug.
I'm going to add a dandelion.
I'm going to add a feather for a rug.
Add a piece of yarn over here. All right. And now we're ready for our next coil. So I'm going to take the next coil that I made and I'm going to start it where my previous coil, my last coil ended. I'm going to gently press it down. Again, we've said this, it's okay if it breaks. We're just going to keep connecting it where it ends and bringing it all the way around, trying to make sure that we're pressing it down into the coil below it and into the natural materials that we're using so that they stick into our nest. And when we reach the beginning, or the end of the previous coil, then we'll start another layer. So I'm ready to dip my finger in, trace some water around, and add some more natural materials. We're going to keep going like this and finish off the rest of our coils. Then we're going to stop. We're going to create a few more coils, and we're going to do it again with 2 more coils, and then we will see how tall our nest is and come back and decide if we want to continue building or if our nest is as big as it needs to be to house our birds and our eggs. We are back. We've added a few layers to our nest, as you can see. I'm gonna move this water out of the way. I'm ready to add my last layer. Kala is working on some really fabulous details. So I'm gonna dip my finger here in the water. I'm gonna run it around the top here. Oh, need some too, of course. Move it over here so it's out of the way. I'm going to add a few more of my natural materials. I've added lots of twigs. I've added feathers and grass and lichen.
I want Birdie to have it shiny.
You want it to be shiny. So I'm going to add that to my last layer here.
Okay, so now I'm going to have
last couple twigs.
Birdie's going to love it.
And I'm going to add my last layer here of my coils all around the top.
What did you do with your feathers?
I put 2 feathers on the inside of my nest to line the inside. I need to put this last coil just a little bit.
So it's nice, like a nice soft wall?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. What do you think? Do you think birds do that?
Yeah.
So our nests are done, but we don't really want to let them sit here to dry. So I'm gonna very gently slide, we have these placemats or cutting boards would work. You could slide it onto a paper plate. This is something you might want an adult's help with. You could build directly on top of a placemat or cutting board if you would like, so that you can then move your nest someplace safe for them to dry. I find that it's easier to roll out the coils on a tabletop rather than a mat, because the mat will move around as you're rolling. All right, everyone, so those are our nests. They are both very unique. I'm sure yours is too. Kala was really enjoying feathers, and she added lots and lots of details to her bird's nest. I really enjoyed making the coils, so I focused on that part of our construction. This is an awesome sensory project because you get to feel the dough and feel all the natural materials. So we hope you enjoyed that today. We encourage you to explore more birds' nests, whether you see them in your own backyard or do some research. And we will be back again next week with more from our bird unit. Thanks so much for joining us today, you guys.
You might have heard Quinny yelling for Mama.
Nap time is over, so our video needs to end too. But we hope that you liked this video. If you did, go ahead and like it below, subscribe to our channel, and learn more about Kindred Arts and our Kindred Kits at www.kindredkits.com. Bye! Happy creating! So now that our nests are done, Kala had to go and wash her hands and take a quick break. I just wanted to remember to share with you that the salt dough that we created today will actually air dry. So you can leave it out for at least a couple hours, but I would say overnight. So this salt dough nest that we made originally as our example is still wet on the bottom, but the sides are dry. We made this one yesterday. We also added less cinnamon to this dough, so that may or may not affect your drying time as well. So if you leave yours out in a warm, dry spot, maybe in the sun, it will likely dry out a little bit faster.